In terms of the costs of this, there's a gentleman, can't think of his Christian name, but Nordhaus is his surname, and he won the Nobel Prize for Economics, and he's costed not doing anything on climate change, and it ends up on his model. And I take what Hugh says about models, that they're a guess, they're a projection, that we actually are better off with it than without it. I like looking at actual situations rather than models. So Myers says, oh, it's cheap to do this sort of stuff. And I say, okay, so if you were setting up a greenfield situation, then you wouldn't put a coal-fired power plant in there, would you? You'd put in renewables, if Myers correct. So in that case, why are the Chinese and why are the Indians, who are industrialising large parts of their populations, putting in coal and nuclear? They're doing that because they are the cheapest, unless you think that their scientists are not as smart as ours. They're doing that because they are the cheapest, they can do it in a reasonable period of time. With all the effort that we've put into renewables, and I kind of want to put scare quotes around the renewables because people tend to limit it to solar and wind. They're not the only form of renewable. Best form of renewable is hydro. And we've got some prospects in Australia, but not a lot. But it's only about 5 or 7%, somewhere in there, of world production. When they look at renewables, I think we get up to low, somewhere around 10 or 11 or 12, but they count biomass in there. That's people burning wood for cooking and so on in the third world. And they count hydro, which is a significant source of power, particularly in places like Canada. Paraguay's completely fuelled by, or powered rather, by hydro, which is why a lot of the Bitcoin miners have set up there, because Bitcoin consumes more than a small country when it comes to electricity. But I think that just as important as dealing with CO2 emissions is ensuring that human wealth and flourishing continues. And if that means a slower uptake of electrical vehicles, then so be it. I'd also like to take issue with Myers' contention that renewable energy is free. It's not free. It's got a significant capital cost. It's somewhere around 3 times as high a capital cost as, say, a coal-fired power station. We've got very low interest rates at the moment. If interest rates go back up more to normal, and I hope they do because that indicates the world's got back to more than normal, that means that power will be significantly more expensive. Capital assets do not last forever. They have to be replaced. So, you know, they're starting to replace the turbines in the North Sea and so on. In fact, North Sea turbines don't last as long as they thought they were because, surprise, surprise, the marine environment is very harsh and things rust and deteriorate. So you've got to replace them. That's not free. They also only work 20 to 35% of the time. So they're inefficient in terms of the use they make of the capital. You might be much better off, if you're worried about sea level rise, for example, putting some of that money into making sure your city doesn't flood rather than trying to stop the CO2 going into the atmosphere. The figures say we haven't been very successful at stopping CO2 going into the atmosphere. And while the Chinese and the Indians are completely, for all practical intents and purposes, outside the emission system until 2030, and that's if you believe that the Chinese will keep their promises, and I don't have a lot of faith in that, then we're going to keep having CO2. So you better build in resilience because you're going to need it.